Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Jenna Priya and I'm the Director of Family Engagement and Special Education for the ARC of Tennessee. And our Family Engagement Project is a grant-funded project from the Tennessee Department of Education. So we are really excited about the potential collaborations with the Department of Ed that we've been having. And this is just one of those nights. Every month we do a family engagement networking night where any family member involved in special education in whatever capacity is invited to come and learn about a specific topic and ask questions and get those questions answered. And tonight's topic is about the Teaching All Students grant that Alison Gauld is heading up at the department that will be implemented starting this year across high schools across Tennessee. So she's going to give us a little bit of information about what exactly that entails and what it means for our students, especially students who have pretty significant disabilities, or their term is low incidence, right? Am I getting that right?
And you're getting close, yes.
Okay. I'm going to let Alison take it over from here because she will explain it so much more eloquently than I can. And but thank you, Alison, for being here. And just for everyone watching, this will be up on our website. If you can't make it tonight, it'll always live there. And we do this every month on the last Tuesday of the month at 5 p.m. Central Time. So be sure to join us and follow on our website and social media for future events and their topics. So, okay, Alison, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you explain in a much better way than I could what you're going to talk about tonight.
Happy to. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep, that's perfect.
Perfect. All right. So first and foremost, ARC, thank you so much. You guys are always so willing to partner in meaningful ways, and you're our lifeline to families. So thank you for inviting me tonight. It's truly an honor, and I'm humbled by that. And thank you to all of the parents. I commend you. Being a parent is busy enough, and to be here tonight is wonderful. So I am going to share with you this Teaching All Students project and give you a little overview of the work. It is by no means going to be too detailed because we just have the hour, but I hope this gives you some time, but also some time to ask questions. If you have questions and you put them in chat, Jen, if you can interrupt me because my chat is now covered and I'm not able to see it.
No problem.
All right. So of course, this is aligned to our strategic plan at the department, and really and truly this work that I'm going to talk to you about covers all areas. There's a strong focus in academic access, but really doing that through the lens of student readiness, including all of the student skills. It's an integration of IEP, standards alignment, and all the skills that aren't on either. And then the real focus of this work is also on building our educators' ability to do those things. So this is a true reflection of our strategic plan, the way the work is designed. So I just want to share a couple of things that we did with our schools. So last week we had 18 school teams with us, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what they did. But some of the things we did that I want to highlight for you is we first established norms around how we talk, one of which is person first. I did share identity first, that if you meet an individual who's choosing identity first language, we honor that and respect that, of course, but that we will use person first unless that individual asks for an identity first words. And so I think it's really important for you to know that we're just even establishing how we talk about students, how we talk about families, and how we talk about individuals with disabilities to really honor the individual's strengths to the greatest extent possible. So we shared this and we spent some time with them. The other things that we did is we shared some of the terminology, and this is where everybody trips up. So I refer to students with complex needs. It's a more inclusive term than an eligibility under IDEA would be. So for instance, intellectual disability. Students with complex needs is far more inclusive. It includes students with multiple disabilities. It includes students who maybe have a physical disability, meaning it is a genetic syndrome, or it might be that they've had medical trauma, right? Think of even some of our syndromes such as lissencephaly, which is known as smooth brain syndrome. There's a lot of complexities that come given the syndrome, and yet it's not fair to use any single term to identify the individual because we lose the individual strengths. And so students with complex needs is my way of honoring that they have more needs, meaning we need to plan more strategically and more comprehensively, but it doesn't mean they aren't going to learn. The other thing this does is help us with the population who has autism, because as you all know better than anybody, students' diagnosis of autism doesn't really tell us anything. In fact, our CDC statistics show that more than 75% of our individuals with autism have no cognitive disability at all. And so I want to be cautious that we're not talking about eligibilities, because then we misperceive and we under-expect. And so that's really why the shift to terms like students with complex needs. The other thing that we're doing is really attacking some of our terms that are kind of embedded in our culture, but in our many ways creating barriers. So one of those is self-contained, or CDC. We use those terms in the field to kind of designate that program that offers highly modified instruction, very specialized intensive intervention services, but truly those end up becoming classroom holding places. And we lose track of the fact that that's intended to be services. So we really have shifted to the terminology of classrooms that offer highly modified instruction and specialized services. And I will say last week, even during our training, the way that teachers and schools started to embrace this language and recognize that it helped them focus in on services and the provision of intervention and instruction, as opposed to worrying about where the person sat. And that's really what we want to get to, is how do we make sure students get instruction and services regardless of their LRE. And so that's why some of this work. So it kind of gives you a preview of where we're headed. Likewise with teachers, instead of using, really taking in mind that person first and the terminology around services and instruction, instead of it being a CDC teacher, it is a teacher who is supporting students with complex needs or has specialized strategies, specialized skills. Also, it is a student who receives modified instruction, not a CDC student. So this is just a preview of some of the work we did, but I think it lends itself to share with you mindset. And that really is the focus of year one, and you'll see that, is that our mindset is conveyed in our words and in our actions. And sometimes our words are saying to everybody else to lower expectations, and it's happening very inadvertently. I've used these terms in the past myself, and then I realized that people immediately assume something about the student based on terms like CDC. And that's a shame, because we all know that we don't want to assume anything about a student. They're all unique, they're all individuals, and they each have incredible strengths. And so this is very much a strength-focused initiative. So let's get into, so what is teaching all students besides this mindset? So first and foremost, I'm incredibly proud of this brand and this logo that we've put together. So Teaching All Students is the new state personnel development grant. So it is a federal grant that we applied for. It feels like forever ago, but it was really last fall in the midst of the pandemic in September of 2020. We submitted a request for this grant, and we were awarded the grant as a state. We had a previous state personnel development grant. Everybody knows it across the state as SPDIG, which was those initials. So we needed to rebrand this because this is very different work. This grant, this federal grant, is for 5 years. It's just over $5 million. And it is focused on ensuring that our students with complex needs are provided these strengths-based, standards-aligned, grade level instruction that they deserve, that's appropriate but high expectations. We're really looking at making sure all students are taught, because when they are taught, they have a better chance of succeeding. And I will share some data that leads us to that knowledge. But this logo I'm incredibly proud of, because it also represents our students. So the initiative is called Teaching All Students, but it is grounded in 3 rights: the right that all students should be heard, all students should be valued, and all students should be challenged. And so you see our conversation bubbles for heard, our heart for valued, and the hand reaching for challenged. These also reflect the picture symbols that so many of our students use to communicate. And so it really is an accessible brand to make sure that our students have access to it and being a part of their brand and the work that we're doing, because it really is about them, for them, and with them. So the Teaching All Students Initiative is the result of being awarded this 5-year grant, and it has multiple parts, and I'm going to give you an overview. So first there's training. So you heard me say last week that we did a training. It was for the full week. As part of the training, we had, I guess it's not here, 2 pieces. One part is a school team training. A school team is made up of a school administrator, a general education teacher, a special education teacher, and the district's special ed director. That is on purpose. As we all know, if systemic change needs to happen, you need the leaders who can affect the policy and changes. Simultaneously, you need the people who implement the changes every day. And so that is why we have 2 leaders and we have 2 teachers, so that we have the people leading and basically removing the barriers that are in their way, and the teachers modeling for their peers what this all means. That was a condition of application. We accepted 18 schools for this first year, and they were all there, and the commitment was very clear. That sounds like, oh, sure, that's the expectation, but I want you to keep in mind we did this last week. There was a litany of reasons why we couldn't do it earlier in the summer. So it was the week that a lot of principals were getting ready for their teachers to come back, and they made this a priority. And they were here and completely present. There were no laptops that were opened at any time, and I did norm. They were there and they were fully engaged. So I think that really speaks to how much the state was ready for this work. We are focused on high schools. That has to do with just some things around metrics and limitations of the grant, but please know our intention is to bring this down to middle school and elementary as we work on sustainability. You'll see that piece in a minute. So one of the ways we're doing this is the synchronous school team. So we had our school team members with all 4 members there, synchronous meaning they were live and with us, and by the grace of everything, we were able to actually be live and in person 3-dimensionally, which was wonderful. Had we needed to pivot and do it virtually, we had a plan for that. The school teams left Thursday after they completed action planning for what I will describe here in a little bit around coaching. But the special education teachers stayed, and in some cases, a second teacher joined them. They stayed for intensive training around some of these ideas specific to the classroom, and most specifically around making sure that every single student has an effective communication system. Because we know first and foremost, to hear them, we need to have a way for them to communicate. And so they had some very intensive training with us on that. There will also be asynchronous training that they will be participating in. That is more of a choice, right? Their different roles will have different levels of engagement and different areas that they need to continue that learning in. And so we're going to have asynchronous training on a variety of topics. These include things like post-secondary options, how to engage students in communication when the student has kind of given up because they've been so frustrated in the past, ways to sophisticate vocabulary, peer training and engagement, making sure students feel participating, like valued in their standards aligned instruction. And the first one's actually a book study on a book, Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. So it's actually a novel, but it's incredible. The other component here we have is coaching. So every school we accepted committed to 3 years. So they will have training every summer, but they will have coaching during the school year. There will be 2 levels of coaching. One will be on-site school team. That will be led by me, where we will be looking at the action plans they created, as well as some of our intended goals for students, which includes increased access to standard line instruction, increased intervention, integration, and generalization, with the idea that they will have better post-secondary outcomes. There will also be coaching led by Vanderbilt, which is one of our contracted partners, as is ARC. They are a partner for us with family engagement. And then there will also, our partners also include the University of Tennessee, Knoxville as part of our logistics team and management team, and then the University of Kentucky for external evaluation. ARC will help us a lot with that school team fidelity and making sure that families are engaged in that. But Vanderbilt will be leading the classroom level coaching, which is really working on making sure students have a communication system. They will be working directly with the student that's been selected by the teacher as the target student. that target student is the student that is most impacted or has the least effective communication system at this time. And we expect that to change quite rapidly when you have a team focused on support. There will also be part of the evaluation process, and the University of Kentucky will help us with this to make sure that we're meeting our goals, and we're meeting our goals in a way where the schools and the teachers are owning the work. The department is very proud of it, but ultimately we are not in the classrooms, and we want to make sure that we've empowered our schools and we've empowered our teachers to be the leaders in this work. All of this will be used to inform a sustainability and statewide implementation, where we hope to take what we learned from this and what's working and what are the key levers, and be able to move that work down to middle schools and elementary schools so that our students begin strong and end strong. So that's just a little overview, but here's a little more. There's a few objectives for this. You can't possibly read all this, but I will send the PowerPoint to Jen. But the first year was really around mindset. Mindset's everything. If you don't believe it, you don't plan for it, it doesn't happen. You have to believe. You have to believe it's possible. And every single day, there's a student or an adult or another individual with disabilities that I run across through social media or the Landscape podcast or other podcasts that I listen to, or just in person, who continuously reminds me that even when I think I have high expectations, I need to raise them just a little bit more, because they will achieve if we strive for it. So we really worked on mindset this last week. I'm so proud of the 18 teams. They were very honest, and they faced themselves and each other in a very strong but collaborative, kind, and empathetic way. And the changes in vocabulary and mindset when they left were amazing. Year 2, now that they know why to teach it, we're going to teach how and what to teach and really get into the strategies. It's really about making sure we've provided enough structure that people can get to year 3, which is if you know why to teach and you know how and you know what, where should that happen and by whom? You see, this is not an initiative that says move all students into general ed and call it a good. This is an initiative saying we need to make sure we do high quality, least restrictive environment, whatever that is for each and every individual. But how do we do that if we don't have capacity in our school to honor that? And so it's really about building capacity so that least restrictive environment becomes much more rich and focused discussion to make sure each and every student has exactly what they need the way they need it. So it's kind of a backwards model, but I'm very excited about the possibilities when you build capacity of the staff first and you've taught them why this matters, so that instead of asking them if a student can come to a class, they're asking when the student's coming, which is a very different question. So we're very excited about what's to come. So just to give you an idea of who our schools are, they're in these counties. So really and truly, this is an easier way to look at it. We truly represented the whole state in this first year. We have schools participating from each of the core regions, which is pretty amazing. And all their commitment was 100%, and it was shown this last week. So I'm very, very proud of the work they've already done. So this is why this matters. So here's some of the data I shared to the grant committee when I proposed the grant, is that we have tracked data on students with disabilities, such as those disabilities you would expect being included in complex needs, such as intellectual disability. And then even when they are in, so these are students who are in, right? We're not seeing that. Here's another approach on that. So they're least restrictive environments, generally at 80% or more of the day. And we're seeing that that is not meaning that you're meeting proficiency. Being there isn't enough. And one of the participants said it best: were they included, or were they sitting in the room with a para doing something entirely different so that they actually weren't included at all? And that's the question I always ask. Did we just move the special ed room to the general ed setting and call it general ed? Did we? We don't know. But what we know is that there's areas where we're not seeing the level of proficiency we would expect just based on LRE. Now, it's easy to say, well, the student has a cognitive disability. I don't expect them to be proficient on TN Ready, right? There's so few of them. But if we look at some of the others, for instance, traumatic brain injury, developmental delay, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a cognitive disability. Hearing impairment. The statistics aren't good because the teachers don't have the strategies to truly engage students in the general ed learning at the rate that they would like to and that we all would like. And so that's really what drove this work, is how do we make sure our teachers are ready to teach all students, hence the name. Right, so these are the areas we focused on this week to really help our schools dig in on their own data. You've also seen this, I'm sure, in other presentations. This is our indicator 14 data, which is when we, a fourth of the districts need to call the students that they had with an IEP who left a year ago. And they ask them several questions, but one of which is kind of, what are you doing now? And this shows who's engaged and who's not engaged. So red is no engagement at all. Blue is other employment. So it either means it's like sub-minimum wage. It could be kind of voluntary. It might be sheltered employment, and it might be just a few hours, kind of like job exploration or something like that. Post-secondary education and training is that orange. So that might be the TRC in Smyrna, which is the Tennessee Rehabilitation Center, or they could be at a TCAT. They might be in a training program through Voc Rehab. The like teal color is that they're competitively employed, a fair wage, doing similar work with people without disabilities, with the same opportunities for promotion. And then that very top bar of higher education, being enrolled in college. And I think you can see that we're continuing to not see the level of engagement we would like for our individuals with intellectual disability. This is more apparent when we look at a 4-year longitudinal comparing students with specific learning disabilities. So students with specific learning disabilities are the left 4 bars, and students with intellectual disabilities, the right 4 bars. And we're seeing that we're just not seeing change. I think what we're going to see is it's actually going to have gotten worse, for lack of a better term, with COVID, because I think we all know that our individuals with disabilities were some of the first to lose work when everybody shifted to work from home. We looked at our partners' work from Tennessee Works, and I'm sure you've seen this. This is just a little snippet from their website, but really looking into the infographic around employment and disability and the numbers, and really looking at the goal on how we can reduce the gap by 5%, meaning the employment rate for individuals with disabilities as compared to the employment rate for people without disabilities. Is that we want to reduce that gap. It would be great if they were the same. They're not, but we can at least try and get closer. And so really got into how we might do that. And that was part of the school's action planning. In addition, schools looked at some studies here, such as this study by Doran, Gao, and Lindstrom on what families want. And you all spoke loud and clear in that study, and they heard you. You want graduation. You want us to consider the regular diploma first, as we should for all students. You want them to have paid employment. You want them to have the opportunity for post-secondary education. And you want them to have a chance to be paid while going to college, just like their peers. I don't blame you a bit. In addition, we looked at the study by Gilson, Carter, Bumble, and McMillan, several names you might know, as these are our Tennessee people. And it was a Tennessee survey. Some of you may have participated in. If so, thank you. Again, you spoke so loudly, and this research was undeniable. The schools heard very loudly that it's time we start engaging in personally satisfying work. And beyond that we're not seeking work. We're not even seeking a job. We're seeking a career, because a career implies longevity. It implies promotion. It implies an attachment. It implies that satisfaction level. It implies building off of your strengths. It implies continuing learning. All things the rest of us have the opportunity to have. Why on earth would we want any less with disabilities? Also, having just the opportunity to interact with people. For how many of us are our best friends the people we work with, or people we have worked with, or it might be the people we went to college with? That's where relationships are made. They're made with people having similar experiences. And so it's really important we provide that opportunity to our individuals with disabilities as well. They deserve it. Friendships are everything. Social engagement's everything. We always said that. We always thought we knew it. If there is anything from this last year that is hopeful, it is the fact that it taught us hard lessons that we didn't want to admit were true. 2020 was hard. COVID is hard. It has taken far, far too many lives. But it has also given us a chance to redefine what we accept as normal and what we accept as the baseline. And I could not be more excited to have received this grant at a time when we get to redefine what we will expect for all of our individuals, including those individuals with complex needs. And so your research has definitely led us to what that looks like. So thank you. In addition, I want to show you just some of the data from our schools so you can see where we're starting, and hopefully in a year or two, I can share very different data. So right now we have a real mix. We have a lot of schools where students are spending 80% or more of their time in a special education setting. So this might be the classroom they used to refer to as CDC, but they're now talking about as a classroom that offers highly modified instruction. It could be any other special ed setting, but I think you can see we range from about 12% to 100%. And we are far heavier on the 100% end than towards the 12%, which means we have room to grow because we know that not all students are the same. They don't all need the same things. We also looked at student enrollment in CTE, the career and technical education courses. What better chance for a student, disability or not, to start to explore and understand the job opportunities that are available for them? CTE is a great, safe way to do that. It's right there in high school where you have lots of support and lots of people caring for you, but it's also where you can really try it out from professionals, because you see CTE teachers, they come to us as their second career. Their first career was becoming experts in their field. And so we wanted to look at that enrollment. And I think you can see, again, it ranges from 0 to 93%. It's a pretty substantial range, and there's definitely a smattering across that range. So each of the schools, just so you know, we looked at this data, but they had a code as to which school they were. They didn't know the other schools, but they knew their own school. So they're able to make their action plan based on where they as a school are in comparison to the task schools. Here's another one, engagement in community-based learning, which sounds great, right? Oh yeah, our students are engaged in community-based learning. But here's the thing, community-based with a classroom of students who are receiving modified instruction. That's not a general education course, which means they're only with peers with disabilities. And often that's one day or maybe 2 days of the week. And so what happens is we have a student who, let's say they miss Thursday, because Thursday is the day that they do community-based learning. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they attend a class. They're gone Thursday, they come back Friday, and we wonder why they're not making progress. They're missing 20% of the instruction. That's before they even have a single absence. Community-based learning definitely has a place, but we need to think about how to do that using our systems such as work-based learning or career technical education, using some of the systems that already have students doing community learning, but they have it doing side-by-side with the peers that they could be potentially working with someday. So really looking at this data. And so then we got into standards. I'm gonna ask you, do any of you know what's in common with all these things? What's the common factor? Feel free to unmute or put it in chat.
I'm watching the chat to see if anyone has a response. But if I can guess, I think the common factor is that they're all brand named items, maybe? No, not phone GPS.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you're getting close. These are all things that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Ah. Yep.
10 years ago. So when our seniors were in second grade, these didn't exist.
Wow.
For our ninth graders, when they started kindergarten, they were just coming out on the market. We can't out-teach technology. We spent a lot of time, and myself included, I taught special ed for over 2 decades, and I spent a lot of time teaching very specific skills on very specific tools in very specific ways. The world is too fast for us to do that. We cannot out-teach technology. You look at that iPad that wasn't available 10 years ago, and now we have infants that are 18 months old who can turn it on, find their app, and move on all on their own. Just 7 years ago, I left the classroom to come to the state. 7 years ago, if I had taught my students, when you don't know the answer, yell, Alexa, and ask, people would have thought I was crazy. Today it works. And in fact, I always have to be careful where I present on this because my Alexa's listening. We can't out-teach technology. We wonder why, when we get a job for a student, they're unemployed just 3 to 5 years later. It's because we didn't teach them to think through new technology. We taught them to do a single job on the technology they were given the day they were employed. We can't be stuck in skills. We need to move to standards because standards instruction is where you learn to think. And this slide just highlights how very urgent that is because the world is changing so very rapidly. Standards teach, people think of standards as English, like learning to read and understanding Romeo and Juliet and Shakespeare, but it's really not. And when you really read the standards, what they're really teaching is critical thinking. They're teaching our children to problem solve. They're teaching them how to analyze. It is so important to know what to do with the data in front of us, even if it's observational, right? I think about I'll be going to the Garth Brooks concert, which I'm excited about it, I think at the moment, as long as, COVID doesn't ramp up before Saturday, but I don't know. But even then, there will be people everywhere trying to get into the stadium. And yet there's a limited number of doors. And I'm going to have to look and see where I start to see a line that tells me people are in the line towards an entrance and not just in a mob. I'm going to have to look for cues as to when that door is opened and make those decisions. I'm going to have to look for cues as to where my seat is. That's all analysis. We want our students to be safe, but the way to be safe is to make sure that they are in a place where they are able to take in data and make a decision. That's what they learn in standards. They learn how to debate. You see, it's important to know what to refuse and when to refuse it, and to refuse it in a way that's not negotiable. That's also part of safety, but frankly, that's just part of being human. They need to be able to engage in comparison. That's how you make a choice. You have to be able to look at two choices and make one knowing what the outcome probably will be. They need to be able to test the hypothesis. I think this might happen, and give it a go. And then look at what happened and make a decision from there on whether you repeat it or try something different. They need to know how to look at the relationship between different things. These are all our standards. Standards are not just English, math, science, and social studies. Our standards are thinking. So much more than I could ever put on here. What do skills teach? Skills have a place. They teach you how to do a skill, when to do it, and where to do it. There are times we need straight up skills, right? When I am practicing cooking, I might experiment with the ingredients. But I need to know that I gotta put on some sort of fat or something in that pan before I put meat, or I'm gonna have a disaster. And there's some skills for that. I need to know how to use that knife correctly to be safe. What I chop might be the experiment. So they really have a place together. The problem is, myself included, I'm the first to call it out, is special ed teachers spend an awful lot of time on the right side of this chart. Standards teach us how to learn. Skills teach us the skills we need when we are learning. We need to have both. That's really what teaching all students is about. And that's where we dig into, many of you have seen this, really a discussion on learning versus mastery. And I think this is the biggest barrier in education, is that we confuse the opportunity to learn. Learning is messy, there is no end. Learning is an opportunity to try things out and continue to try. I am not done learning. I am still reading books on how to be a better teacher because I'm not done. I haven't figured it all out, and I probably never will. Mastery is knowing something to that end point, where we want that for skills, but it's not fair to measure access to learning based on mastery. When we say a student cannot participate in the classroom because they will not master the standards, we have forgotten that nobody else does either. We shouldn't hold a higher standard for individuals just because they have a disability. And so we spend a lot of time on this in our training. It's really about making sure our students have access, but they also need a chance to participate. Because if we only provide access, which is what I think we've had happen, students are sitting in the general ed classroom without the participation, it's like having a whole lot of keys but nothing to unlock. It doesn't lead you anywhere. You need both, because when you have the key and you have something to unlock, anything's possible, including the chance to take your own journey to see the world. So that access being the keys, the participation, in this case being the Jeep, means together I can go explore wherever I choose to explore based on my passions, my goals, my dreams for me. Why wouldn't I want that for anybody? And that's really what teaching all students is about. So, real quickly, we talked about post-secondary impact and what that really looks like. That when we look at studies, we find that the factors that change post-secondary success for individuals is that they had high expectations. They had them from their parents and they had them from the school. That indeed you will learn, and indeed you can and will achieve. And you'll achieve the goal you choose, not the goal I choose, which is hard because kids don't always pick what we want them to. But isn't that true of any child-parent relationship? We want our students to have those work experiences, and best case scenario, it's paid work during high school. If not paid, at least some work. To this end, we also have a new work-based learning class that's available to schools to use this fall, and it's for the alternate academic diploma. And the requirements in work-based learning is that the student has completed an application to some adult service program, whether that's Project Search, Voc Rehab, ECF waivers, something. They've completed the application, and they've either done paid work experience, see how I'm leveraging that data, or they've done another work experience where they're building a portfolio of experience to share at an interview. So just know we're trying to do more than just teaching all students to make some of these things happen. And then the other thing we know is that participation in what's called a TIPSID, a transition program for students with intellectual disabilities. We in the state of Tennessee call them inclusive higher ed, and we have Tiger Life at Memphis, Edge at Union, Next Steps at Vanderbilt, Ideal at Lipscomb, Access at East Tennessee, Futures program is at UTK. I feel like I might have missed one, and if I did, I apologize if anybody from that program is here, but all of those programs also lead to great outcomes. The thing is, we know that those programs, by and large, require our individuals have a third grade reading level and a third grade writing level. They also need to have clear goals. You know where that happens? Is when we teach standards. And so that's part of where we're going to be bringing that down and making sure that everybody knows this data and understands how important it is we begin with high expectations from the beginning and we keep them going. But certainly in high school, we don't ever get to the point where we say, well, they haven't learned it by now, so let's not teach it. That's not the case at all. If they haven't learned it by now, we have a lot left to teach. And yep, I did get them all. Woo-hoo. Great memory for me for a moment. And so these programs are small and it's competitive, but it's still something we should be striving for. We also looked at this. I'm just going to flash through this real quick. This is a study that's cited here. Again, I'm going to be giving you this PowerPoint. There are 7 reasons for standards. It's their right. They're relevant. We have no idea what students can achieve unless we reach for it. And I'm not asking you to choose instead of life or functional skills. I'm asking you to choose and life and functional skills and standards, right? And it's a powerful world. Students with complex needs need comprehensive plans, not selective. It doesn't replace anything. It just adds to it. It's also individualized, right? There's nothing that says you can't individualize modifications. And ultimately, if the students believe they can achieve, watch out, because they'll do it. And I think we're seeing that as we play out with our centers for decision making and some of the cases we've had with conservatorship and supported decision making is when a student knows that they can do it, they can do great things. So this is my last slide, so there's room for questions. But ultimately, the Teaching All Students program is a way to gently shake the world and say, we can do better. And this is me. So I will send this to Jen so that she has it. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was a lot really fast, but I wanted to make sure I got it in.
That was amazing. I was like tearing up at certain points. So thank you for that. I don't have any questions. Let me see if there's any coming in the chat, or if anyone who's joining us in the Zoom would like to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. I'll also go check on the Facebook Live to see if there has been any question asked.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah, that was really great. And I'll say that last bit about the third grade reading level. My son is going to be in third grade this year, and I just thought, wow, that was impactful. Like, if we start now and really push on that, just that piece alone, like if he wants to go to one of these programs, he's going to have to be reading at that level. This is a really good time to start working on that. So that was great information.
Absolutely. And I mean, what a great year for you to start, because you can see what his peers are doing and have a really good idea of what that means, right? What is third grade level? Right.
And I see Sarah Moore, you have unmuted.
Thank you, Robin. It is so exciting. I am all passion and all excitement. So thank you for recognizing that. Yeah. And Emily, you know, each program has their own requirements, but by and large, nationally, those are kind of the criteria. And there are programs like that all across the country, and I encourage you to look at a state. We, in fact, have some students from out of state here at some of our programs, and what an incredible example of leadership to be able to leave not only home, but leave their state in the safety of being right in their parents' corner, right? And really being that adult. And it's been so fun to watch them grow into the leaders they are.
Alison, I do have a question. Is Tennessee kind of leading the charge in this as far as this type of program for a state? Are there other states doing something like this?
So there's other states who have a state personnel development grant, but I will tell you the great majority of them are focusing on multi-tiered systems of support or access for high incidence disabilities. Low incidence disabilities just is not a big one. There's some that have kind of a small little like add-on piece to their grant around complex needs, but we're really the only ones that are focusing 100% to my knowledge. The federal government has already asked us to present at the conference because what we're doing is so unique. So I think we're leading the way in this. I know that our schools are going to be leaders based on this last week. I'm so excited for people to get to know them because their work was so good. And Sarah, yes, right now it's high schools. They do have to apply. We have a competitive application just because of our own capacity. So that coaching component and to really be present, I'm not magical. So there's me and there's a limit on capacity with that. And so we have the 18 schools right now. We are going to open the applications for cohort 2 in the winter, probably between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And we're hoping to get 25 into cohort 2. But we are really looking at sustainability. So we're looking at how we can push it out further, faster, the more knowledgeable we get as to what parts of coaching were the most impactful and how could we maybe do that in a way that we can reach more schools than my own single capacity can possibly do. So we're working on it. We're just at the beginning infancy stage. I agree, Robin. I think this is really, I've always said, and I mean, you and I have had this conversation, so you know, but if we learn to teach our students with complex needs well and have them be active members of our school, meaning that we hear their voice in leadership. We don't know who they are when we look through yearbook, but they're on a variety of pages, right? We see them all throughout the building in a variety of LRE settings. When we do it well, that means we know how to teach a lot more kids than we do well right now. And so absolutely, I think this is going to support a wide range of students far beyond our expectations. And that's why we did a more inclusive name of teaching all students.
I was just going to say that even if your high school isn't participating in this first cohort, just the fact that Allison is sharing this information with families in this way makes it even more impactful if families are getting the same terminology and understanding of the high expectations, then they can apply that to their children as a part of the IEP team and really bring it up into school, even if it's not, they're officially trained right now, what have you. So it's great messaging for everybody. It's really impactful, and your passion shines through when you present on it. So we appreciate that. That was, as a parent, that was really impactful for me. So thank you.
Well, I think Jen, that I passionately believe our students can be successful. It's beyond us going into disability awareness, and it's really us moving into disability empowerment. And power means the ability to act. And if we're going to achieve that, we have to give them the ability to act, not act on their behalf. And so I passionately believe we can do it. It is going to require us to get out of our own way.
Yep, exactly. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. If anyone else has one they'd like to share, last call.
And I will send you the PowerPoint. It's approved, so you can use it as you choose. One thing you will notice on this PowerPoint, it is our brand PowerPoint, but you will notice that there are symbols on slides that tell our participants whether we're doing discussion or data. We really are trying to model the expectations we have for our schools. So when you see that, yep, we did that. I will try and give you the vocabulary key, that's the symbols and what they mean, just so that you can start to see some of the resources we're pushing out to schools.
That's great. Sarah, did you want to ask a question?
Oh, I just want to say thank you. I'm a parent mom of a boy with complex needs going into high school. So I love your passion and enthusiasm, and I agree for sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'm excited to see what he becomes as he finds his wings in these 4 years and figures out what he's passionate about.
Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Allison, for presenting tonight. All of that information is so well received. And we will have this up on our website so that anyone who wasn't able to make it can still watch it, and we can all look back on it and see it, and it will live there for a resource for families forevermore. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we are looking forward to working with you in our capacity as we move forward with this. This is so great.
I'm so excited. Thank you for your continued partnership. Truly, ARC has become leaders in empowerment, so thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next month.